I found my game of the year. I know. It's only June, and the game was released in March, but I know who I am, and I know when the game lightning strikes, obliterates my skeleton, vanquishes my soul, and tells me that I found a winner.
I know what I'm about, son.
How someone judges a game has always been fascinating to me. I remember reading video game magazines as if they were holy scripture, reading and rereading them, desperately seeking out color and face combinations masquerading as numerical value of art, preposterous designations that determined what was cool and what sucked, bestowed upon me by God himself, Sushi X. The commandments were all there. Sound, graphics, yeah, I'll get to all that, super swear. My friends sometimes tell me that my taste in games is inscrutable, but I disagree. I can scrute my tastes quite well, and here is my scrutation. I love a game that I think about, even when I am not playing the game. There, I can't make it any clearer than that. And man, did I ever get my wish with an approximately 3-hour-long JRPG with a magnificent aesthetic of digital paintings processed into pixel art, created by a small team led by Jozef Pavelka, a Slovak man residing in Czechia. This is Felvidek. Our tale begins with a cutscene composed of crispy, crunchy polygons, snap crackling and popping into our eyeballs. The castle has been set aflame, and only one man will stand tall and save the day. Pavel, an alcoholic knight with divorced dad energy. Pavel longs for Paula, who has left him for heretofore unknown reasons. But Paula's reasons shall not be left unknown to Pavel for long. Felvidek is set in the 15th century in what is now Slovakia. Felvidek translates as the uplands or northern lands of what was once the Kingdom of Hungary, a power in Central Europe that existed in one form or another for nearly 1,000 years. The Kingdom of Hungary at the time was under the rule of Sigismund, Holy Roman Emperor. Because Sigismund was married to the Queen of Hungary, he was also the King of Hungary and therefore sovereign of the lands portrayed in the game. In Felvidek, the player is given few history lessons, as it would be unrealistic for someone to constantly remind the protagonist about the historical particulars and eccentricities of the era. That works in Disco Elysium because the protagonist has amnesia, but you can't go to that well every time. A player unfamiliar with the era and region must simply put it together and hope it makes sense without much context. Felvidek was undoubtedly written in Slovak first, then translated to English and Russian for wider appeal. Early in the game, Pavel encounters Hussites, a common enemy throughout the adventure. The Hussites were a Czech Protestant Reformation movement and eventually army that was none too pleased when the Catholic Church requested that their namesake attend the Council of Constance to explain his reformist views, but instead of all that, was burned at the stake. Oh, the guy who ordered this to happen was Sigismund, who was king of the Romans at the time but not yet emperor, I'm pretty sure.
Come on, Wikipedia! Load, you unwieldy behemoth!
But this game mostly focuses its ire on a different antagonist, the cult of Zurvan. Zurvanism was actually a Zoroastrian religious movement and cult that existed and fell apart centuries prior to the time period of the game. But sometimes a cult has such a great name and backstory that anachronisms can be forgiven for the sake of storytelling. After ransacking my own bedroom, I had Pavel spring into action, only to be stopped by the Lord of the Uplands. He betrays no interest in the burning castle in the distance and instead winces at Pavel's wine-soaked odor, then asks Pavel to play a game of cards with him. Jozef does this a number of times throughout the game. A serious matter is brewing and his mind wanders to games. I can relate, but I don't have a castle to save or a kingdom to rule. Then again, what is life without merriment? What is life to a peasant, or even a lord in the 15th century? I can scarcely remember a life before the internet, let alone imagine the experience of living in a far-off centuries past. Can we really blame the Lord for wanting to play chess all the time? The new hotness for tabletop players? Pavel is joined by Mate, the local holy man. On the way out, some NPCs had a thing or two to say. Ha, 'tis I, the wine pilferer. Felvidek has a classic turn-based combat system, the first-person variety a la Dragon Quest. Special attacks in this game are called feints, and they can be replenished through tools, like magic and MP respectively. These processed pixels have weight and danger. At the burned castle, Pavel finds a mysterious purple seed. Pavel and Matej have differing theories as to its origin, establishing their character dynamic right away. Pavel is a drunken lout, more grounded in base pleasures but also reality, whereas his friend is more serious but also too self-serious. At the risk of bringing this up again and again, this reminds me of the dynamic between Harry and Kim in Disco Elysium. Pavel even has the expression. Outside, our party gets into another tussle, this time with cultists. They have come to the region to prey upon people who suffered from Hussite raiders, eager to join any cause to give their lives new meaning and power. Also, some townspeople are just straight up kidnapped. I love the anachronistic tavern music, rock and electronica blasting throughout the evening. In fact, all of the music in the game goes so hard and yet so soft, like spicy queso. Every track is by Marcel Godot's Holy Crab, and worth the vibes even when not playing the game. I also love the character portraits. Look at this man, the agitator. Look deep into his eyes and weep. Let's talk about the graphics, shall we? Modern so-called AAA video games have the budget, manpower, and even the time to create any style available in the infinite spectrum of art. But the vast majority of the time, the developers of these games seem to choose the same aesthetic, reality. Even big-budget games with fantasy or science fiction elements go this route. Big-budget video games now mimic the visual style of big-budget movies, photorealism intermingled with explosive special effects. Congratulations, video game industry. You are now officially as cool as Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Hundreds, if not thousands of people working around the clock, pulverized under the mountainous, inglorious weight of crunch to present us with something that we can already see if we look out the window. Where's the personal touch? The distinct flavor? Am I the only one who gets excited when there's a new Doritos or Mountain Dew? I freely recognize and acknowledge that some games may benefit from having a more grounded in reality aesthetic. Although I would personally prefer a 40-hour Spider-Man game that looks either like the recent thoroughly impressive animated movies or the animated series from the 90s, a Spider-Man game set in New York might do well to look like a simulacrum of New York. And no shade to the hard-working, in fact overworked, programmers and artists who finger-bled this into existence through the dual powers of talent and insomnia. Nevertheless, I do prefer video games that lean into a distinctive video game aesthetic, either by choice, by necessity of budget, or some combination of both. So many modern video games employ ultra-realistic graphics, but because of this, these games end up resembling one another so much that I am reminded that I am merely playing a game. How could I not when I am bombarded with the AAA look? The aesthetic in Felvidek has such a personal touch that it doesn't entirely remind me of anything else. Nobody will ever look like the agitator. Nobody. Felvidek excels at side quests. My favorite side quest occurs early in the game and helps shape the world. It involves an NPC called Butt Naked Man. Pavel buys him some clothes and the grateful man gives the party a gift. Not particularly complicated, but it was worth it for the character to simply exist in this game. Back at the castle, Pavel finds Paula, clad in violet and bearing a hat with vampire fangs on it. How did I miss that during my initial run of the game? I'm seeing this only now, watching my captured game footage. That should have been a warning that all was not right with Paula, but alas, I was bewitched by her womanly countenance. Okay, so anyway, she claims that she has left Pavel because he is on the sauce too much and then wanders off screen to refang her hat. Egads and zounds, Paula and the young consort are enjoying the Lord's merry fuck. It's here that the aforementioned agitator lets slip that this is the doing of the cult of Zervan. I won't go over every last detail of the main quest for fear of spoiling the entire story and adventure, but I will touch upon some of the finer points and funnier points. Hast ye seen the biscuits? Well, hast ye? Felvidek is replete with bespoke cutscenes. I adore them all, and I think I may know why. I have determined through careful calculation of my own mind that how much weight and importance I give a video game cutscene is inversely proportional to its resemblance to the in-engine gameplay graphics. Allow me to elucidate. A cutscene is a video game cinematic that breaks the action and requires no input from the player until its completion. A real-time cutscene is rendered through the game engine, whereas pre-rendered animation and live-action cutscenes cannot be replicated with the game engine and generally do not closely resemble the gameplay. In the 1996 carnage-soaked action RPG Blood Omen, Legacy of Cain, our titular antihero is visualized by the player from above, Zelda-like in perspective, but un-Zelda-like in ESRB rating. As the story advances, sometimes the gameplay abruptly stops, and the player is presented with pre-rendered CG representations of Cain, his allies, and his enemies. Seeing Cain this way instead of how he is portrayed in gameplay is a shock to the nervous system. It shouts to the player, hey, something important is happening, pay attention. Conversely, an in-engine cutscene looks like, the rest of the game. Sometimes it's not entirely clear which is which because some cutscenes blend the two. I differentiate cutscenes not by their actual software mechanics, but by their whacked-out distinctiveness between gameplay and scene. I'm not a programmer, I just feel my way through the vibes of a game. I certainly can see the upside to the modern-day in-engine cutscene. It allows some players to feel their participation in the story even during gameplay. Marcus Phoenix in Gears of War looks the same during a cutscene as he does when the player is annihilating baddies into windshield-stained bug meat. These cutscenes bleed into the gameplay, and sometimes they are pieced together well enough that the player does not know where the gameplay begins or ends. Developers began experimenting with cutscene and gameplay combinations to create quick-time events, and eventually the coalescing of story and gameplay altogether. I can see the appeal, I truly can, because it may benefit immersion. But much like the ultra-realistic graphics thing, this has the opposite effect on me. It just doesn't appeal to me. If everything is a cutscene, then nothing is a cutscene, and the gameplay merged with cutscenes never makes the gameplay pop for me. It doesn't feel immersive. The gameplay is the story that I'm writing, and if the gameplay feels like the story, then it also feels like someone else is writing it for me instead. Everyone is different, this is merely how my brain processes the tastiness of a game. If you feel the inverse, that's fine, our taste buds just want different snacks. I can absolutely see why this has changed so much on this side of the millennium in video games. Once in-engine graphics could replicate or even surpass a CG cutscene, some developers probably thought, well, what's the point? Cutscenes which bear little resemblance to the gameplay are perfect for Felvidek. The high-in-the-clouds perspective of the characters mixed with tall, screen-encompassing avatars during dialogue are both lovely in their own rights, but there is something engrossing and hair-grabbing about the sudden, unexpected change in venue. Pavel and Paula in a jagged polygon cutscene feels momentous. Is our hero about to reconcile with his fair damsel? No spoilers, but what do you think is about to happen? It hits different, like when you get a sugar-blasted marshmallow in your spoonful of Lucky Charms, as opposed to the still good but unblasted non-marshmallow spoonfuls. The TLDR version of this is, I want my video game cutscene to look like a movie, but I don't want my gameplay to feel like a movie. Another thing I love about Felvidek is the intimacy of the surroundings. There are only a few locations: the castle home, the burned castle, the tavern, the town, the barn, a forest here and there. It reminds me more of an adventure game setting in which everything is happening in one house or one neighborhood. It creates a sense of community with a bunch of NPCs. Early in the game, the party happens upon a man outside of the tavern. He is fearful of the cult kidnapping people in the night. Later in the game, he is not there anymore, and the loss is felt. My favorite minor character is the Burgmaster. I had to look up the term, having not heard of it before, but I believe the writer was referring to a burgomaster, or burgermeister. A medieval meister of burgs was essentially a mayor with slightly different authority and a much goofier name. In modern times, this title is still given in some nations, and it refers to someone appointed to the position, not elected, though it seems to vary from nation to nation, so don't quote me on that. The party interrogated the Burger King, but he proved to be dishonest, no matter how much we grilled him. We left to conspire against him. Verily, I shall have it my way. The permanently horny priest is another welcome addition to the cast of characters and creeps. His theological position is that so long as something does not harm someone, God would similarly be unharmed and unoffended. Let my ass be pure. Lots of silly characters with silly names like Dick and Weenie. This game was made for me. Another character is a Turk under the employ of Sultan Murad II. At the time the game takes place, the Kingdom of Hungary was dealing with the Ottoman Empire, expanding their territory through conquest, which deeply upset the Holy Roman Empire because that was their whole thing. Modern gamers always ask, "Can I pet the dog?" I am pleased to tell you that not only can you pet the dog can join your party. Nora is instrumental during one quest. Throughout the game, Pavel and Matej are the only two permanent party members, but others join and leave the party. This allows more time for the two main characters to bond and bicker with one another. Traversing the wilderness made me curious about the setting of Felvidek. The allure of other cultures can set our imaginations aflame, beckoning us to the edge of the map, throwing our belongings in a pillowcase and driving to distant lands. In Europe, that faraway place can be one of over 40 nations. In the United States, where I lay my head, a road trip to another land is a choice between Canada, Mexico, or best of all, driving into the ocean. It's either that or an expensive flight and an exhausting and intrusive airport experience. Americans are more likely to experience other lands through art, like a Russian novel, forever teaching us how to be sad, or a series of sexy chewing gum commercials. These are basically the same thing. Felvidek rewards the patience of the player on several occasions. For example, I had Pavel knock on the door to the locked fortress over and over again, prompting a new response every time. This went on and on and on. As another example of this, throughout the game, Pavel can drop a coin into the well. I assumed that doing this would increase the party's luck or something along those lines, but if done enough times, someone is revealed to be living in the well. I left the inhabitant alone, but I have been told that Pavel can actually throw a small bomb called a petard down the well and straight up murder this dude. I did not think to do this. I particularly love the dialogue in Felvidek. Lots of playful, medieval isms, these and thous thrown around, each one fancier than the last. Fast and dirty bad translations hampered otherwise great games far too long. I don't know how Felvidek reads in Slovak or Russian, but it is a treat in my native tongue. Did I mention that it's funny? It is a delight. Serious topic, serious stakes, but enough cornball and goofball seamlessly mixed within to give the game its own unique personality. I found the story quite compelling from start to finish. Felvidek does not require much of a time investment, lasting about 3 or 4 hours, or so I thought. I discovered only after I finished the game that there are a great number of side quests and branching stories that I missed on my first playthrough and that a completionist run would take closer to 8 hours. I am definitely going to play this game again at some point. I'm not a game reviewer exactly, but if my opinion matters to anyone, I highly recommend this game. It's my goatee so far, because it achieved enough EGM points on my individual scorecard, designed to determine whether or not a game is bitchin'. And it is. Furthermore, I hope that Felvidek is expanded through a sequel or additional content. I want to return to this land. It sure beats reality.
She like me, she might be what I need.
Hi everyone. If you like what I do, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. All that good stuff. I also have a Patreon, like everyone else. Patreon.com/RenegadeCut. See you soon.
She's vibing, too wavy.